Okay, I'm Jim Ramsky from Vernon, Texas, and we're talking about the Sibley tents. They're designed by General Sibley, based somewhat on a teepee design. And the Sibleys are really great. They have a vent at the top that can be covered during cold weather or rainy weather to keep the rain from getting in. They have just one center pole, and they're tied down. This is a true Sibley. This is a walled Sibley. The walled Sibley gives more room for maneuvering around inside the tent because you don't have as much taper. But these were designed to be slept head in, feet out, and the soldiers would sleep in a circle around a central fire or a heater or stove. And that way you could keep the tent warm, the bodies warm, and it keep the weather out and get everybody in there. The difference between a teepee and a Sibley is, of course, a teepee has smoke flaps that move about, and they're adjustable with two separate poles that are thinner than the regular teepee poles. And then, of course, all the teepee poles are tied in the center, and they come out to the ground. But the outer skin on a teepee doesn't go to the ground. It's actually made to sit a couple of inches above ground, and there's a liner wall inside. And the liners and sections around it's tied to the inside of the poles, so there's a 2 or 3 inch gap in between. And what this does is it actually cools the tent in the summer, and it makes the tent warmer in the winter. The idea being is the heat beats on the teepee canvas or the buffalo hide, and it gets hot, and it creates a hot air current drawing the hot air up. So you've got this hot air coming in through the gap, or the cooler air coming in through the gap, getting heated and coming up, pulling air into the teepee itself from the ground, which the ground would be cooler, damper, and you get an evaporative cooling effect from the air coming into the teepee. In the wintertime, that acts as an insulator, and they would put straw, hay, hides, anything they could find to fill in that gap, and that would be an insulation against the wind. They'd also pile hay up across. Adding to the evaporative effect in the summertime, to cool it, they sometimes dampened hay at the bottom of a tent around there. So as the air flowed through, it actually cooled down several degrees by that airflow motion. Now, they also had a thing called an ozone, which provided the type of a ceiling on the teepee itself, and it would come in on the top so that they could hold the heat in an area, and it would have a front drop wall. So essentially what they're making is a small room within a large room. So let's say we can get the temperature down or up 20 degrees above outside. If you have a smaller area that enclosed the fire pit, you can get maybe another 20-30 degrees higher inside that smaller room within a room. So that made a teepee a good all-year-round home to be in. So these Indians learned by cause and effect and trial and error how to make a great tent. Now, Sibley liked that a lot, but with the liner and everything else, the teepee gets pretty heavy. So he designed this Sibley to accommodate the Army. And this has one center pole, and one person can put these up. After you stake down the outer circle, you bring in this pole from the door, and you push the peak straight up, set the pole down, and your Sibley's up. Now, of course, a walled tent has these outside poles to hold up the wall straight, and the cone doesn't start on top, but that's kind of irrelevant because whether it's walled or straight taper, they're both put up the same way. And that's about it.
Now, on an original teepee, does the inside wall go clear to the ground or not?
Yeah, the inner wall, well, yeah, it covers completely to the ground.
But the outside?
It's open near the top, comes up, depending on the size of the teepee, the people in it, whatever, however you make your liner. Usually they're about 6 foot tall. So that up here, it's hot air, and it's all continuing to go up, but here down in the living area, and remember, most of the Indians, people in the teepee, sit on the floor. Then you're down in the lower area. So here's where the cool air is, this bubble of cooler air, and all this hot air is coming up and going straight out the top. Now, I was talking about those the wings on the smoke flaps, what they call them, and then smoke flap poles. You could move them, close one, leave one open if the wind's coming this way, and that creates a suction.
Oh, a draft, yeah.
Yeah, draft. So you'd move those smoke flaps to accommodate the downwind side, and it also helped to keep the rain out. But the center of it was always open. Okay?
Right on the teepee, yeah.
So you can see right to the sky. We closed the Sibley because we have one center pole, and any rain coming in is going to come running right down the center pole.
Right.
But on a teepee, of course, all the poles come down the side, so any water coming down would run right down and it would go down the poles or down the
Like
skin
some
of the
stacked
teepee
muskets
itself.
would be, right?
Right. And the water's running down the edge and hitting the ground instead of dripping down on the people within, and it doesn't come straight down a pole in the center. Now, if you had left a rope hanging or something from the top, it would drip down that. And many of them use an anchor rope. When you get all the teepee poles tied up in the center, you've wrapped around, you walk around with this rope, and you put it in the inside, pull it straight down and stake it, and that would be right behind the fire pit. And then any water that did come down the center would run down that rope and right in beside the fire pit, so it was just dampening the ground there.
Oh, neat. They're pretty ingenious, weren't they?
They were. You know, they designed that teepee over years and years. In fact, there's a family, I can't remember the name right now, but it'll come to me. They're a white family from out northeast, actually lived in teepee for 2 years, continuously, all year round, the Laubens. And I have an autographed copy of their book. I live in Texas, right on the Oklahoma border, and I can tell you, I know a lot of Indian people out there. I'm actually part Blackfoot myself. But the Oklahoma Indians are friends of mine. We've gone camping, we've gone to powwows together, and every one of them, when they open the teepee box up or the bag up, they always have a copy of the Lauben book in there because it shows you how to put the poles up in the proper order.
Oh, okay.
There is a way to do it. You tie 3 poles together, and then when you open them up, and they're tied at the top, it becomes a tripod. So you can see how you would have the 3 tied up here at my knuckle. When you lift it, bang, there's your tripod. You spread them out, and then they're laid in order, crisscrossed at the top, so they all lay interconnecting. Instead of being a wedge like this, they all come to a point and crisscross. And since you have the 3 center, you'd lay, you know, say 3 here, 3 in the next one, 3 in the next one. It would make a nice even point at the top.
Like muskets being stacked.
Like muskets being stacked, they interlock better, and it's stronger. And then when you stake down the shell of a teepee and you have this strong pyramid shape, when the wind comes along, it tends to go around, but it pushes the teepee closer to the ground. So the more wind there is, the more it tends to push it down by the action of the way the poles are made, and then the anchor rope helps too. So the more pressure you have, it's actually pushing down on these poles, but they're carrying all the weight around in a circle, pushing down into the ground. So they can withstand amazingly high winds.
Wow.
And I've been in some pretty serious thunderstorms in my teepee. And while everybody else is, you know, looking at the walls, waiting for them to come in, you know you have nothing to worry about. The only concern I've ever heard is a guy used an electric wire. I think he used telephone wire, some thick cable. It was insulated, but he did that to wrap around and used as his anchor wire. And it did hit. A stroke of lightning hit the top and ran down. But that's the only time I'd ever heard of that. Now, lodgepole pines don't seem to attract electricity near as much, and I'd never heard of any lightning hitting a teepee other than that one. And that might be an old wives' tale too. I didn't see it, so I don't know. But I don't know.
Well,
If we go on,
thank you,
I
sir.
might think of some more, but that's all I can think of right now.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Sure, you bet.